knock off about 3 today because we got the practice today. Okay, again, we are talking about equipped to serve. We are looking at the spiritual gifts, and we pick up our discussion. We will start in the new material at 4:15. I wanted to go back to Ephesians 4:11 to give us the context of where we're at. Ephesians 4:11. He himself, Jesus, gave some the gift of being apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers. Now it is interesting, and we have discussed this before, that those different giftedness are broken apart. We usually try to think of the pastor as all of those things, but it is broken up there. And I truly believe that sometimes that is a problem, because God gifts each one according to the measure of their faith and so forth. And sometimes we expect the pastor to exhibit all the gifts. John?
Are you supposed to have a mic on for the recording, or?
I am not. It hears me. My laptop hears me. I don't know. I don't listen. I don't go back and listen to the recording. I don't know how well it picks up you all when you ask questions. But I think you can hear it a little bit. But the computer picks up. I don't use a microphone with it. Isn't it funny? I've been doing this a long time, and that just occurred to you to ask. Okay. So, but these gifts are meant to be distributed throughout the church, and not necessarily for the pastor to have all of them. These gifts are for the equipping of the saints, that is, the born-again people, for the work of ministry, of service, for the edifying or construction, build-up of the body of Christ, till we all believers, come to the unity of the faith. That, again, is not unity for unity's sake. That is unity of faith in Jesus. That's what binds us. It's what Jesus did on the cross. When we try to get binded together with people for reasons other than the cross, we get into trouble. But I think I am safe to say that if we are unified in the cross, then the other things that we fight about in church, we should be able to get around them. If you are unified with somebody in the work of Jesus, and you both say, that's the most important thing, let's be about the work of Jesus on the cross. Let's be about shining his light. By the way, I think the carpet ought to be red. I think we can work around it then. When another person says, I agree that Jesus is the most important thing, you really need to change your mind to blue carpet. I think we can work through those difficulties, and I don't mean to be facetious about it. Well, I think I very obviously did mean to be facetious about it, to make too much light of it. But I do believe that if Jesus is the most important thing, then the disagreements will take their proper priority. Okay? So this is agree on the cross, agree in the faith, and then negotiate on the other things in light of the importance of what Jesus did. Okay. And the knowledge of the Son of God to a perfect man. We are all come in unity. We are being moved from a broken sinner with no relationship with God to a broken sinner with a relationship with God, who is perfecting, who is working together to sanctify and become holy, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. Okay? So that's our goal. Everybody, you can stop working at your holiness when you are just like Jesus. Okay? Until then, you got to keep the pedal to the metal. You got to keep working at Christ-likeness. We are no longer children. We went over this last week, verse 14, that we should no longer be children. Now, if you remember, we looked at the word for children here, and this is more like that we are no longer being babies. And this is different from in 1 John, where he says, my little children. That is teknia. That is a term of affection. This term here is that we should stop being babies. And using babies there in the way of, you're acting like a baby about this. What does a baby look like? Tossed to and fro and carried, and the word there is blown away, blown back and forth, blown to and fro with every wind of doctrine. So anything that anybody tells you, it knocks you off your frame. It says, I don't know if I can believe the Bible anymore, or I'm going to have to flip-flop on that. By the trickery of men and cunning craftiness of deceitful plotting. So be warned. We have a unity in the faith and knowledge of Jesus that is moving us in Christ-likeness together, so that we're not going to be babies about the way we approach things. We're going to be mature believers. We're going to cling to biblical doctrine, and we're going to try to grow more like Jesus together. That's why we're gifted. That's why God gives the spiritual gifts. This is the goal of the sanctification process, spiritual maturity. Okay? So that is the edifying of the body of Christ. These gifts are not given so we can go, wow! They are given to move us, move the whole body in a cooperation in the unity of the faith and knowledge of Jesus to spiritual maturity together. Spiritual maturity. So the results of a spiritually mature, gifted people ministering and equipping the saints. So the results, the intended results of giving gifts is what this next verse, and this is where we pick up with the new passage. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15. But rather than being babies, what we are to do with one another is speak the truth in love. What does it mean to speak the truth in love? Does anybody have an idea what that phrase? Be nice? What if it's a hard thing? Can you be nice and tell somebody a hard thing? Okay. Well, I agree. Why be nice? Compassion. That's right. Why? Why be compassionate? It's in the phrase. I'm trying to get you to look at the phrase. In love. Because you truly love one another. That's the basis of speaking the truth to people. It's not because you want to show them wrong. It's not because you want to have power over them. It's not because you want to expose their rough place. It's because you love them. And if I'm about to drive my car over the cliff, I don't want you to spare my feelings. I want you to yell, hit the brakes, hit the brakes. What's most loving? Rex, I need to talk to you about something. You have a tendency to drive fast, and there are certain situations we come in life where driving fast is not the best idea. You know what? We're heading over the cliff at that point. Speak the truth in love. Ask yourself, why am I pointing this out? What is my goal in pointing this difficulty out? And if it is not because I love that other person, then you need to step back and just re-examine your motivation to things. Now, that is a hard job. Not everybody in life is lovable. Not everybody in church is lovable. Not everybody in church is born again. In church, we are to speak the truth in love. And I tell you, truly that is a challenge that can be a challenge for me. I do not like to tell other people what's wrong with them. Does that make sense? I don't like to tell other people what their flaws are. I don't really like people telling me what my flaws are, though I do. And I ask you all, if y'all see that there's something that I need to be doing, and I'm not doing it, I need you to love me enough to whisper in my ear. I say that all the time. I hope that you have heard me say that. If you see me doing something, especially as a pastor, but just in life, or not doing something that I need to be doing, I want you to tell me. Because you love me, and you want to help me to do what is right. And I miss things. Speak the truth in love. I just think that is a golden nugget in the Scripture that you need to grab and hold in your hand, hold tightly. We need to be willing to tell the truth, but our reason needs to be because we love that other person. And if you can't do it in love, then step back and examine the situation. There may be a better way. If you don't love that person, there may be a better way than speaking the truth you want to speak to them. So it says, but speaking the truth, believers may grow up in all things into him who is the head. Okay? Again, there is movement here. We're not to be like babies. We are not to listen to every little whim. We are to cling to the Scriptures, stand on the gospel, and interacting with fellow Christians, we are to speak the truth in love so that we can grow up together. And truly, if that person that you are speaking the truth to is unified with you in the cross and you love them, I think that there is a good possibility that you speaking the truth and they know that you love them, of them being able to see themselves clear and making a change. I just think this is a power-packed passage here. I really do. As far as getting along with other people and the reasons that we do it. Unity for unity's sake, that's worldly. That's not what it's talking about. We are unified in the faith and knowledge of Him who died for us. And we speak the truth to one another because we love one another, so that we can all mature, so that we all become more Christ-like together. That is edifying the body of Christ. That is constructing the church and building the church. And I feel like if we are consistent in doing this, as people come through our church, people that are unified in the cross will be drawn to that. People, and those are the people that we want. And then as a team, we work together to speak the gospel and live the gospel to people who don't know, who are not unified, and minister them. To Christ, we are becoming like Christ, growing up into all things, into Him who is the head, Christ, from whom the whole body, the whole church, joined and knit together by what every joint supplies. That's so Pauline, that Paul wrote that, and it is a mouthful. As best I can make out of that phrase, he is saying, so that each member carefully fitted together by supporting ligaments, according to the effective working by which every part does its share, causes growth of the body for the edifying of the body in love. Okay? That's a big wordy phrase, but it's what we say. We're unified in the faith and knowledge of Jesus, so that we are not babies, so that we do not mix words on what we teach. We don't say, well, I saw something on TV last week that really makes me question the Bible. I don't think we need that in the church. I mean, we need to be seeking truth always about the Bible and about everything. But We are unified in biblical doctrine. Biblical doctrine, so that we can speak to the speak the truth in love to one another, so that we all become Christ-like. And what that verse 16 is saying, each part is contributing. We are knitted together by this common faith. That's the ligaments, this common doctrine of salvation, of the cross, salvation in the cross. And that is what unites us, so that every different part of the body is united in that common, what it says, faith and knowledge of Christ, so that we are growing spiritually, where the church, because everybody is contributing and joined by that common faith and knowledge, the church is constructing itself, building itself in love. Okay? That's a mouthful. Does that make sense, or do I need to try that one more time? John Hilker's got it. And this is another version. I believe this is the New Living. That what we just read was the New King James. That's our normal default translation. This is the New Living. He says, for verse 16, Jesus makes the whole body fit together perfectly. Each person that is a part of our congregation, Jesus is what makes us fit together. As each part does its own special work, each one contributes their giftedness to the whole, it helps the other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. I think that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And that is the value of sometimes looking at other versions. As I say, I tend to teach and preach out of the New King James. The reason for that is I believe the King James just sounds like the Bible to most of us. Sounds more like the Bible. But the New King James is updated, and it is easier to understand. We don't speak the King's English anymore. That's 1611, so that's 410 years ago. The language has shifted. And I believe the New King James captures that feeling of comfort and feeling of the Bible with updated language. Sometimes I really like the New Living. The Holman Christian Standard Bible is done by what we used to call the Sunday School Board. It's a the Baptist commissioned translation. NIV is pretty good, but I commend you to, if you are King James or New King James, or you get stuck a lot in your version, talk to me or look for a modern translation to open and look at when a passage is confusing to you. I do it all the time. I'll get caught up. I went and looked at the Greek for that version, and so my little notes in parentheses, that's when I look at what it says in the Greek, and I was like, okay, that doesn't help too much, what I just came up with. The New Living was very helpful to me. In Colossians, a parallel passage in Colossians chapter 2, verse 19, they're not connected to Christ, the head of the body, for he holds the whole body together with its joints and ligaments, and it grows as God nourishes it. I'm not sure so mark out that first sentence in your brain. The cross-reference was that second sentence. Jesus holds the whole body together with its joints and ligaments, and it grows as God nourishes it. So speaking the truth in love, we've talked about that already. Literally, if we translated it literally, it would be say truthing in love. If you go about life, truth in love, do your truthing in love. Maintaining truth in love in both speech and action. Live the truth, speak the truth. I'm sure I've said it to you before. There are three main things that I try to do as a pastor. These are my goals. Three main things that I try to do as a spiritual leader in this congregation. Number one, I try to teach the Bible, what it says. I try to look at what it says and teach what it says. And sometimes I have to pull it loose from church tradition, what we were taught that it meant traditionally, if that's not what it says. That doesn't happen much. I find, because it is my comfort zone, my religious comfort zone, I find that generally Southern Baptists have done a good job translating what the Scripture actually says. Every now and then I disagree with the traditional thing, but teach the Bible. And then the second thing I try hard to do is tell the truth. You can teach the Bible and what it says, and then you can nudge it to endorse this or that. And so you've got to work all the time to make sure that I am not teaching what I think. I'm not teaching to endorse a viewpoint that is non-biblical, and that I'm telling the truth. And I should always be loving, and that brings me to the third point. I try to be gentle. Teach the Bible, tell the truth, and try to be gentle, because I am nothing special. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. That is the great equalizer. I can study the Bible every minute the rest of my life, and I'm still going to be sinful. So I need to be gentle. It's not my job to break people off. Sometimes, number two, tell the truth, and sometimes being gentle are challenging. Sometimes the truth is going to be painful. But fortunately, I don't have to. This congregation, I don't have to be too ungentle, almost never, to speak the truth. Jesus is the head of the church, and it is from the head we get the capacity to grow. Okay? I think that's an important statement for understanding church. We offer ourselves, we offer our resources as a congregation to Jesus, to His purposes. And when we decide to do things, we try to prayerfully align our intention with His intention. Ultimately, it is Jesus who causes the growth. I think that He is always growing us internally. And I think always that internal growth leads to external growth, the numbers of people. And so we cannot control, we have only a small bit of control over people that come in to our church, numbers, new people. We only have a little bit of control. We have some more control about what happens once they get here. But that there are so many churches, there's so many options, there's so many different things that they are looking for, that it's very, you could spend your life bankrupt the federal government trying to figure out what it is they want, and they may or may not come back. We should try, but what we can always do is work at growing spiritually. And I believe if we do that, if we all work every day to grow spiritually, that people that come in that want to grow spiritually are going to be drawn and united with us in the faith and knowledge of Christ. Now, for whatever reason, they may stay and they may not stay, but they're always going to be attracted to spiritual growth. And so if they're not coming in, we still have good work to do. And if they're not staying, we still have work to do. And if they stay, we still have work to do. And that is spiritual growth. you have some measure of control over your spiritual growth. And that is if you're doing the work, even if you feel numb inside, if you are reading the Bible, if you are disciplining yourself to read your Bible, if you are praying, if you are contributing to the church, if you are seeking God intentionally, you will find Him. Now, it may take you, depending on how dry you are, and I'm speaking from experience, it sometimes takes a long time. But God is not trying to be tricky with us, and He's not hiding from anybody. We have some manner of control over our internal spiritual growth. And that needs to be our number one target, because Jesus causes growth. Thus, this is an interesting thing. Jesus is both, according to this scripture, He is the source of the believer's growth. So we turn to Jesus, faith and unity in Christ, so that the body may edify itself. And He is the goal of the growth. If we turn to Him as a source of growth, then how do we grow? By being more like Him. Isn't that interesting? There's a loop that we get in if we will do it. If we will submit ourselves to Jesus and seek to grow in Him as the head, then we grow by being more like Him. I thought that was interesting and neat. It said in 16, the effective working by which every part does its share. That word is metron. We talked a little bit about that before. In other places, rather than share, metron is each according to the measure of their faith, the word measure. But that is metron. We get the word metric system from that. Which every part does its measure causes growth of the body. So each is gifted to the measure of their faith, which if every person does its metron, its measure, its share with those gifts, then Christ causes growth. And then what is our goal? To have the metron, the measure of the fullness of Christ. So he uses that word to explain that loop. You're given a gift according to the measure of your faith, so that you can measure your gifts out in order to cause growth of the body, and that growth will be to the metron, the measure of the fullness of Christ. That's a loop. It's a loop. And who holds the loop? Who is the loop? That's Jesus. So if we do this, then we become a new man. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 17. This I say, therefore. If you used your gift to edify the church, each part, each gift contributing so that everybody grows in Christ's likeness. This I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord that you should no longer walk as the rest of the Gentiles walk, in the futility of their mind. Okay? This is not a worldly process. I told you, this is the Jesus loop. Well, that's what I should have titled this Bible study. We're caught in the Jesus loop if we're doing what we're supposed to be. And you can't get caught in the Jesus loop and do stuff like the world does it. Okay? And that's hard. Because we buy our groceries at the worldly grocery store, and we drive the worldly car, and we live in a worldly house. We watch the worldly TV, and we wear worldly clothes. So we walk in this world, but we're aliens. We're supposed to be caught in the Jesus loop. You should no longer walk as the rest of the Gentiles walk, in the futility of their mind. What they put their emphasis on, what they put their passion on, their causes, their needs, their passions are futile. They will not take them anywhere. And if you share in those passions, in those causes, and you make them as intense as the world makes them in your life, then you're going to pull yourself out of the Jesus loop. And you're going to be living your life for you, and you're not going to be growing Christ-like. You can't lose your salvation. Nothing can separate us from the love of God, but you're not going to be continually growing more like Jesus. What does this do when they get in this futile existence? They have their understanding darkened, being alienated from life of God. Sin blocks us from access to God. We talked about it Sunday. The first gift of Jesus is peace with God so that we can have access to God. And this darkened mind alienates people from God because of the ignorance that is in them, ignorance of God. What are we unified in? Faith and knowledge of Jesus. They are ignorant of the faith and knowledge of Jesus. And what they see in that is, oh, the church is just a collection of people. It's a club, and they think they're better than us, and I know they're not. That is what that is, and it makes us mad because we're sinful too, but we need to understand that that is ignorance of the truth. We're supposed to teach the truth in love. And if you love, now that's speaking of truth and love to other church members, but I think that phrase also applies to lost people. That's what Jesus did. Jesus came for a lost world, and he spoke the truth in love for the purpose of loving them so that they have access to God. And we need to remember, rather than getting angry at them because they accuse us of being cliquish and clubbish, we need to, one, make sure that they're wrong because we're caught in the Jesus loop, not the worldly loop in Jesus church and churchianity, but that we're actually in Christ, not just in a building. We need to have love for them and understand that their mind is darkened. Now, the best example is if you've got a child that is on drugs, I'm certain we get angry at them at the time and hurt by it, but we still love them. And when you tell them you need to get off drugs, you're doing it because you love them, not because you want to make them feel bad. Okay?
Why is it so hard to love everybody?
Because we're sinful. Because we were made to love God. And we can't. It's hard. It's hard. And so we want to elevate ourselves. Generally. Now there's different flavors of this. I mean, nobody sins exactly like the next person. But I think we often elevate ourselves. The reason we want to be first in line is because we feel that the higher we reach and the more praise and power we have, the closer we are to God. It is a twisted attempt to be near God. And it's our own sinfulness that makes it hard to love. In marriage is the hardest thing. You want to learn about how selfish you are, get married. And you know what? I've kind of lost my train of thought because a million pathways went out of my brain that I could run down with that analogy of marriage. And the fact is, in marriage, we are sinful and they are sinful, and it makes it a challenge. We love them the most, so that when we feel bad, they're who we kick because there they are, and we tend to be the meanest. Why do we do that, Faye? Why are we the roughest on the people that we count on the most? It's because we're sinful. And it makes us hard to love, and it makes them hard to love. And it's a mess. We are tied in knots. We are twisted inside and out. We were created to walk together in unity of the knowledge of Christ, and sin has broken that chain and separated us. And we're just wandering around, thrashing out, trying to get attention, trying to get love. And it's because we were created to be close to God and receive His love. And we're not getting godly love from other people. So we get angry and resentful. And we want them to fix whatever it is their sin problem is so that they can love us the way they're supposed to. It is challenging. But a lost person is ignorant because of the blindness of their heart. Of course they think we're petty and worldly in church. Why would they not? Because that is all they know. Their heart is blind to the unity of faith and knowledge in Jesus Christ. They're blind to it. They can't see it. Who, being past feeling correctly about the world and about God, have given themselves over to lewdness, because lewdness will give you a charge for a minute. They're thrashing about, reaching out, trying to figure out why they exist and what will give them meaning. And on the way, they stumble over some lewdness, and it helped them feel better for a minute. So they begin feeding that. And it's like all drugs. The first hit really gives you a charge, and the second one not so much, and the third one even less. And you try more and more to wring some satisfaction out of whatever. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. And that's why people, there are people in this world that are spiritual, and they'll join a cult, and they'll get treated awful, and they'll get extracted from the cult, and then they'll go join another cult. Because for a moment, that fills that empty place, that God-sized hole, and makes them feel good. To work all uncleanliness with greediness. All right, so we're about out of time. Well, we're getting into some good stuff now. Let me just run right quick through. Of course, it made me think of Romans 1, and I'm just going to run through that. We're all familiar with Romans 1. But it's talking about the same state of mind, and I've got about 8 verses here, and then that's where we'll end today on that really high note. But God shows His anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Not only are they ignorant, not only are their hearts blind, but at some point they get intentional about going after God's truth. They want to put it down. It is something to be put down and exterminated and belittled. And there are differences in, if you look at the Bible, there are differences in, we're all sinful and we're all equally guilty before God, but there's different severities of sinfulness. There's accidental sins in the Old Testament, and there's intentional sins, and they're treated very differently. Anyway, they suppress the truth by their wickedness. They know the truth of God because He's made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and the sky. Though through everything God made, they can clearly see His invisible qualities. Everybody was created in the image of God. Everybody naturally has a theology. What the problem is they begin to listen to sources of theology that are not the Bible, God revealing Himself to man, and they build very incorrect things. But we are natural theologians, is what this verse is saying. Everybody has a concept of God. That's why there's religions everywhere, all the time. His eternal power and divine nature, so they have no excuse for not knowing God. Verse 21, yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship Him as God or even give Him thanks. A heart that is not thankful is in trouble. And they began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. That's what I'm talking about. We're natural theologians, and if it's not from the Bible, we're getting it from somewhere, and it's something other than God who revealed Himself in the Bible. As a result, their minds became dark and confused, cloudy, blinded, harsh, claiming to be wise, wanting to be wise, wanting to be right. They became fools, utter fools. And instead of worshiping the glorious ever-living God, They worshiped idols made to look like mere people and birds and animals and reptiles. Okay? Flip on YouTube and flip through. And you see people and birds and animals and reptiles that people are looking at to get something from. That somebody has made those things very important. And then there's other people that look to YouTube to go, and I'm not condemning all YouTube. I'm just saying all these things are almost literal. You can find literal manifestations in our world today of people that they wouldn't think I'm worshiping like I'm going to worship God at church. They would say, this is just my hobby that I think about all the time. This is what is on my mind all the time. John?
I've said for years that this verse refers to the worldly thoughts about the church, like for Christmas and here, say you worship people or idols replace God, like Santa Claus replaces Christ, you know, at Easter, the little chicks and the Easter bunny replace, you know, Santa Claus.
Yeah.
I don't know about the reptile, but those are things.
Yeah. And again, there's nothing, and I want to be careful because I look at YouTube all the time. You know what I look at? I look at Minnesota Vikings and stuff, people talking about the Minnesota Vikings. And, you know, there's people that year-round talk about the Minnesota Viking every day of the year. So I'm not condemning. When I say that, I'm just saying that you can have a passion, and it sounds weird. Sometimes when we read this verse, we want to think about that's the way that you did it in ancient times. We still do stuff like this. We still make things, and you can replace God in your life with hobbies and passions and causes. That's my point. So God eventually, when we go down this pathway of pushing God out, making other things most important, so eventually God abandons them to whatever shameful things their hearts desired, and as a result, so he just lets them go. You feel guilty at first, but eventually you stop feeling guilt. You just submerge yourself in the culture, this world of your passion. As a result, they did vile things, degrading things with each other's bodies. They traded truth about God for a lie. So they worshiped and served the things God created instead of the Creator himself. People, institutions, sports teams, who is worthy of eternal praise. Amen. That is why God abandoned them to their shameful desires. And they suffered within themselves the penalty they deserved. You bring it upon yourself. You have no eternal purpose. And you suffer because of that. Your life feels incomplete. And your pain doesn't really have a reason. Because you've divorced yourself from the big purpose of being here. Life doesn't make sense. Since they thought it foolish to acknowledge God, he abandoned them to do their foolish thinking and let them do the things that they should have never done. Things that never should be done become the norm. Their lives are full of every kind of wickedness, sin, greed, hate, envy, murder, quarreling, deception, malicious behavior, and gossip. And we have a temptation to be angry at them. When I say we should have a heart for the lost, what I mean is we should pray to have mercy in the way we think about people in this condition. And that's hard. That's a challenge. I want to think of us and them. Good and bad. And I think that's a mistake. I think Paul is saying that each man is responsible for his own sin. And we have to stand on that. But this is not a reason for us to feel superior or to hate anybody. We need to feel compassion for them. And we need to be very careful. You've got to be very careful. When somebody has a darkened and confused mind, I think sometimes we're limited on what we can do to minister to them. You have to be very careful when you minister to somebody who is deep in a sinful structure, that you don't get yourself pulled into their structure. And that's a challenge. And what can we do always, even when we can't, like, tangibly, physically minister to somebody? We can always pray. And I just think that is so important. It is so important for us all to have people, maybe you could say a list of lost causes, because they may be lost to us. They're not lost to God. And if we are diligent in prayer, it will change our heart towards that person to the way God thinks about them. We'll love them like God loves them. And two, God may, through our prayers, somehow intercede for that person, pierce their shell, and draw them to God. And that's what we're trying to do in our prayer, in our weekly prayers for certain loved ones. But we need to be saddened by this and not angered by this. They are backstabbers, haters of God, insolent, proud, boastful. They invent new ways of sinning. They disobey their parents. They refuse to understand, break their promises, are heartless, and have no mercy. They know God's justice requires that those who do these things deserve death. That is, atoning for their sin with shedding of their own blood. Yet they do them anyway. And worse yet, they encourage others to do them too. And they will, and you won't do them, they will mock you and make fun of you. And I believe we are to put off that old man. But you have not so learned in Christ. Indeed, you have heard of him and have been taught by him, as the truth is in Jesus, that you put off concerning your former conduct, those worldly attitudes, the old man, which grows corrupt according to deceitful lust. So we will pick up there in verse 20 next week. Any closing comments or any questions about any of that? Let's all think of somebody that is caught in a sinful loop. And let's pray for them as we close today.